It was Friday the 13th, ominous day, but Friday the 13th of March when we shut down due to COVID and the medical emergency that became a global pandemic. What at first a lot of us thought was just going to be maybe 3 weeks at most, eventually shut down this field for lacrosse, the baseball field, the track, and the tennis courts, ending our spring sports and killing all spring seasons. It was a heartbreaking end to a school year. However, with the start of the 2020-21 school year, the KHSAA got together, and although the Big Ten decided to suspend all athletic play, the KHSAA said it's good to return to sports. Our next guest is the commissioner of the Kentucky High School Athletic Association, Julian Tackett. And we're going to have a discussion with him about how COVID has impacted athletics. So if you want to make sure you come back to the student section and stay in your designated blue section, there's a few things that we need to do. And if you want to be able to go, let's go! Let's listen to Mr. Tackett. Guys, welcome to another edition of Decades. Let's go, Rocks!
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Left in the game. You believe in miracles? Yeah!
Right, oh my gosh, another plane has just hit another building.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Not have sexual relations.
All right, guys, welcome back to class one more time. And today's guest is the KHSAA Commissioner, Julian Tackett. Julian, thank you for being a part of this conversation with us.
Not a problem, Coach. Glad to do it.
So mid-August, the KHSAA came to a decision to allow a return to play. This was to the relief and joy of many parents and athletes. It was also to some criticism, such as the governor who believed it wasn't the wisest decision. How did the KHSAA come to the decision of saying, we're going to go ahead and get back onto the field?
Well, you know, from the moment that we started having problems with our spring championships, we kind of committed to exhaust every effort we could to try to have something in the fall. Definitely, you know, I thought at the time that canceling the 2 basketball tournaments was the hardest decision I'd have to make, but it was nowhere close to the entirety of an entire season being canceled, spring, and all the different kids with football. And I mean, football spring practice, yes, but baseball, softball, track, and tennis. I mean, just never envisioned that would ever happen. And we set about, you know, and I was pretty forthright the whole summer. I said, guys, folks, it won't look like it did before, but we're going to play somehow. And I got a board of directors, a board of controls, what they're called, that backed me up on that. And they made their first real tough decision in July. I asked them to postpone practice, and they agreed to that. But we all agreed that we were going to start in September, and then they met again in August just to reaffirm that. And one of the reasons we waited was to try to get more data, see if more data came in. I mean, certainly, I don't think any of us thought. I doubt if any of us in March thought this would still be going on. I think we all had a little bit of wishful thinking that this would kind of pass, and it hasn't.
No, it hasn't. And I mean, I recall, I mean, I know it had to be a very, very difficult decision because, like, Sacred Heart had just played in at Rupp in their tournament game, and there was another game lined up to go right afterwards when the winter sports of basketball, championships of basketball were cut. And then, but I think you're right. Everybody thought, okay, well, maybe post spring break, we'll get this. I mean, well, maybe end of April, we'll get this. I mean, well, maybe we'll have something in May. We'll get it. And it kept on going. Well, if you could tell those kids that did lose that spring season, and they didn't have a chance to even have any bit of a game, what would you tell them coming from the commissioner's office?
Well, obviously, we were like everyone else learning at the time, trying to figure out, was there a safe path? We were not the first state by any means to call off our spring tournaments. We delayed it as long as we could, and then it became apparent the more data we got from public health and the more data we got from the CDC and other places, that it became apparent that this was just not going to work for the spring. And we really did hold out hope against hope and looked at all kinds of mitigation strategies. And when it became apparent that we weren't going to be able to resume in the spring, that's when we really started looking 24/7. And I literally mean that, at what could we do mitigation-wise to be sure that we were going to be able to play in the fall. It was starting to become very clear that this was not going to simply go away. Just like it's pretty crystal clear it's not simply going to go away because there's an election coming up. I mean, science has got to solve this problem.
Right.
And so it was, those folks, I apologize, my partner in crime decided he would walk across the camera. He is my regular, by the way, he is my regular streaming buddy. So anyway, we decided that we would try to go the extra mile. We're not going to be first, but we weren't going to be last. And we were going to try to figure out a way to never let another group lose. That group sacrificed like no other group has ever had to sacrifice. And we don't want that ever again.
Okay. I mean, it had to be difficult. What would you tell the fans that are not getting a chance to sit in the stands right now? I do know that the KHSAA just paired, you've had a long partnership with NFHS, but you are providing opportunities for high school athletics to be viewed, since we're keeping people safe, by limiting numbers in the stands. So what is that you guys did do?
Well, I think the most important thing that we realized early on, and it's now been confirmed by more than one medical and psychological study, was the loss to the students of the spring was more of a consequence than the loss to any adult. And I love our coaches, and I know they lost a lot as well, but our primary focus is on the student, and it was with the resumption this fall. And so that's why when it came down to it, let's play first. Let's get the kids an opportunity to participate. And then let's see what else can be done. And everybody that's left out or reduced or whatever in this current, I don't even want to call it a new normal, because I don't want people to think we're going to get used to this. This is a short-term mitigation. But everybody that got left out thinks they shouldn't have been left out. I watched probably 14 football games Friday and Saturday through a variety of means. And you had a variety of acceptance of all of the mitigation standards and all the public health requirements. And unfortunately, what we risk if we don't adhere to those is the loss of school in person, not just the loss of sports in person. And that was the most important thing. I'm sorry if Aunt Betty and Uncle Joe don't get to see a game this year. We hope through some type of video streaming they'll at least get to see the kid play. But most important was to have the kid play and prioritize the parents being able to see them play.
And I can attest. I mean, I know from the spring watching a number of our seniors who didn't get to have their baseball season, and our team was had a lot of seniors that had a lot of talent, and they were looking forward to trying to have a great season, to be competitive, and not getting a chance to be in that dugout. That was crushing. So it is good that we're able to get these guys to be, whether it's on a golf course or a football field or on a soccer pitch and cross country meets, we're allowed to see those. So that's wonderful. Now, has the office had to deal with any parents that have called and said, why are you making me the bad guy? I'm concerned about the circumstance, and you've gone ahead and said it's okay for my son to play sports or my daughter to play sports, and I don't feel good about that, and now you're making me the bad guy. Have you had calls like that? And if so, how did you address it?
I don't think there's been any message that hasn't been conveyed in some way or another. Why did you leave me out? Why did you make my kid play? I've heard that one. I've heard from school administrators, if you all would just cancel, we wouldn't have to make tough decisions here locally. Heard that. I often say, and I probably say too much now, but everybody in our state really loves local control. Well, but local control is not just for the easy decisions. Local control is for the challenging decisions too. And in many cases, what we've really come to realize, and even the governor, who's the most conservative person I know dealing with this virus, has admitted that you're not going to be able to take a statewide solution to Fulton to Ashland and Newport down to Williamsburg. We're going to have to be able to start life again and then be able to target those areas that aren't able to get things under control. I think you'll probably see very soon there's a metric that I understand they're going to develop that will help guide the closing of schools and or the postponing of sporting events, et cetera. Some of our administrators have been asking for that for a while, and it may turn out to be one of those things that you got to be careful what you ask for. If some of the data says, oh, by the way, because the data in your area is this way, you don't get to play, but the area next door is not so bad, so they do. That's going to be another challenge for us. But right now, we are all trying to navigate this COVID world. Dr. Capilouto made a comment in the Lexington newspaper one day that I think went all over the state. But he said, we really have two choices. We can shut ourselves up in our homes until this is all gone, or we can try to navigate and live in a COVID world. And that's the decision that I think.
If you were talking very much like, okay, in this community, it's okay, this community, it's not, we're looking on some metrics. Not this last week, but the week prior, Kentucky had the highest number of deaths in the state in the history of the pandemic, as well as the highest number of cases in that week. Is there a point, is there a number that you guys have that are like, okay, now's the time to reconsider? Is it a statewide reconsider, or are we going to be just looking at specific counties when we look at numbers like that?
I suspect you'll hear announced early this week, because it's happened every week. There'll be schools say we can't go this week, or we can't go for 2 weeks, or we've got a certain group quarantined. And I think that's the way it'll be for a while. If we end up with enough of those, then I think you've got to consider a pause, but we're not at that point yet.
Okay.
If you look at the Department of Public Health's incidence page, which is a key map, last Friday they had 7 counties that they called red, meaning that their incidence had gotten higher than 20. I believe the number is higher than 25 per 100,000 people, and there was only 7. So and that was with our numbers as high as they've been. The other thing that we've learned a lot in the science from all of this is that we had a big spike right after July the 4th in positive cases. Now, we were also, one of the reasons why, if you look at all the states around us, we've had fewer deaths and fewer cases than most of our neighboring states, is we were one of the early states where we allowed people to do asymptomatic testing. You didn't have to be showing a symptom to go get a test. That probably kept our spread down more than anything. And then I think, secondly, you have to look at when they're massaging it and looking at all of this data, we've got to kind of realize that if we start seeing the waves go through like we did after July 4th, where all of a sudden we could kind of watch as people got back from their vacations and it was red to the east and then slowly back to the west, and you start seeing that, that's got to be a red flag. We've got to be intelligent data consumers.
So you become much more of a scientist here than you far ever have been in your entire career. So.
Yes, and I've had more consultations with the Department of Public Health than I ever want to have, and this is over. I hope that I never have to deal with a pandemic again. But the challenge for anybody looking at this, everybody that wants to question a decision made needs to remember that no one alive has ever administered during a pandemic. We've not had one. We might call H1N1 from back in the late 2000s. We might call that a pandemic, but it's not near the scale what we're dealing with now, and certainly not as deadly. So it's been really challenging. Everything you do is an educated guess. I think you and I may have talked one day at a meet and just talking about graduate school and all different things. And I remember making the comment, because I made it to so many people, that when I finished my MBA in finance, I swore that was the last class I was going to take. But certainly the last 5 months have been an intense health re-education as well as statistical. But I'll tell you what, it's been interesting is the sociological lesson. The number of people who, because they have a Twitter account, think they're an expert.
Yep.
Or because they have a Facebook account, they're now an epidemiologist. A virologist and an epidemiologist are so specialized. There's not even many of them around. But boy, we got a lot of them on social media right now. and the challenge with social media, and I say this because I know students will watch this too. You can find an article to back up every opinion you will ever have.
Yes.
But then you got to learn to intelligently sort through it and realize, halfway through it, oh, that's garbage. Let's move to something else. And not simply, we have so many people today that read a headline and forward it. It's gospel because of what the headline says.
Right.
So this has been an interesting thing, because if you think about it, in our country, it's the first real crisis we've had since social media began. It really is the first time that health has been in danger. Oh, the last election in 2016 was a disaster. And our governor's election a year ago wasn't exactly stellar in terms of social media. But this is the first time social media takes a chance on resulting in death or resulting in sickness if you don't monitor and really filter what you're reading.
And what's interesting about social media is that, as you pointed out, is that how much misinformation is being shared. We just had our class, we were able to meet with Dr. Connie White, the Deputy Commissioner from Kentucky Public Health. And one of the things that we discussed was, that there's all these rumors that, that the public health records people who died in car crashes as COVID deaths and things of that sort. And because somebody shared that on social media things, and of course it becomes a gospel. And so her biggest struggle is like, how many people are doing a disservice to our communities by just simply sharing things that they don't know nor understand. So.
Well, and the article that came out last week, and I happen to have been in several meetings with Dr. White, who's a fantastic person. Mm-hmm. And when we've seen this come out, even the CDC, when they issued their article, they mentioned that you're dealing with people, there's only a few that COVID was the only thing. But the rest of them have been COVID plus something else, and people take it and twist it to fit their narrative. And Lord knows all the states are kind of on their own right now because we're not necessarily getting a lot of consistent leadership out of the federal government. So it's been a real challenge where other countries, you study this stuff, that other countries have had certainly much more centrist control, and they maybe got ahead of this earlier because they just did what they were told. And we're just not that kind of country. And this is one time it's worked against us, I think.
Now, you just shared that how states are on their own. Are there other athletics associations that the KHSAA has been in really close contact, whether it's one of our neighbors, Ohio, Indiana, Tennessee, whatever, and saying, you know, or is it like all of you guys are coming together? Or is it just one or two? How's that working?
Well, the answer to your question is yes. There's been multi-weekly calls each week with all of the states together. Then we are in section 2, which is Ohio, West Virginia, Virginia, and then on up to the Delaware, DC, Maryland area.
Okay.
We've met an additional time a week. All the football states have had a meeting every week where we talk about issues specific to football, and now we're starting to have those same conversations relative to cheerleading. And heaven knows what we're going to have to deal with when we start talking about wrestling. But we are all exchanging data, an unbelievable amount of data. It started out as more of a, when we were all getting together each week talking about what we were going to do with spring, and it's morphed into every state, every week, because we're all facing the same challenge. We all have parent groups that just want to get back to normal. You know, it's my kid. I'll decide if he risked his own death by participating without necessarily thinking that they might be risking everybody else in the class. You know, a lot of things, you know, surprises to everybody. And I'm sure that Dr. White mentioned something like this or knows of something like this. You know, everybody's worried about football all summer. Football's not the riskiest sport, according to all the sports medicine people and the virologists. It's wrestling followed by competitive cheer. And then we get down to football. But the reason is football has so many things you can do to mitigate. You can put the splash shields inside your helmet so you're not spitting.
Right.
What has happened, what we have all learned, those of us that were trained in finance and management and have had to learn science, and those people who knew science have learned that we were all concerned early about how this thing was transmitted. There was a time, you probably remember, when schools first shut down, when we had to wipe everything down. And we had, if you got a package from Amazon, you set it aside for a couple of days and you sprayed it. Well, we're finding that that's not necessarily happening at all very much.
Right.
But what we do know is it's spread through aerosol spray. By aerosol, I'm not talking about something you pick up and push the top on. I'm talking about your mouth, your voice, stuff coming out of your mouth, which means that who would have thought when all this started that singing was one of the things we really were going to have to see if we could get started back with. What about cheerleading, where you are trained to stand and propel your voice? You know, dance even. And cheer and dance both have this secondary metric where you're not only exhaling and putting out all the aerosol, but you're also right next to your partner. You're up in their face. I purposely watched the last couple of weeks of high school football games, and the average, you know, there was all this fear we all had this summer about, well, the offensive line, defensive line, they're going to be together the whole game. They're together about 7 seconds, and then they're apart for 30 to 40, and then they're back together. So it turns out that it's good that we're doing all the mitigation, and we're certainly not going to stop it. But it says that it's more than just that, and that's because we did learn. That's why the thing that I hope that Dr. White expressed, and I think everybody else will when we talk about this, is as you look at what's happened, things have changed. People want to get online and say, well, back in April, the CDC director said we didn't need to wear a mask. Well, then in June, they came out and said something different. You know why? Because we learned.
Right.
You can never stop learning. You don't quit when you go to your first day of history class. You don't learn it all. You have to go the second day to learn something, and the third day to learn something. And so we've learned that through this virus very much.
Final question, but it's going to have a couple answers to it. An answer of how would you answer it to the students, student athletes, and how would you answer it to their parents? And that is, as the commissioner of the KHSAA, how to remove, what is it that you believe from everything you've learned that we need to do to continue to move forward to ensure that we do have games, to ensure that we do have competitions in athletics? So how would you address that to the student? How would you address that to the parent?
Well, first of all, I would say to the students, don't take your foot off the gas. They have sacrificed so much since June. They can't stop now. They didn't get to play certain things. They had to go through, who in the world thought we'd be lifting in a weight room with a mask on? Who thought we would be doing some things that we had to do, shutting down because Johnny went on vacation? They're going to have to continue to sacrifice, and that's not easy. They may have to postpone that fall trip they wanted to take because they don't know what they're going to encounter when they go. And that could go for the parents as well. But it's the athletes are doing what they need to do. They just need to stay the course. When you're on the sideline, if you don't have that splash shield in, keep your helmet on. If you got your helmet on, you still need a gaiter. If you don't have a splash shield, remember that when you lean over and talk to your buddy, we can't do what we did a year ago. I watched a game involving Cincinnati St. X and a school out of Indiana 2 weeks ago. I think it was New Richmond. And I wanted to reach through the television and grab a hold of the coaches because the kids were high-fiving each other and all the other stuff. And I know it's hard not to do that. You're trained to be enthusiastic supporters, but ask yourself if what you're doing could contribute to us getting shut down. So maybe it's a backhanded tap on the rump. Maybe it's a little bit of hand on the back of the shoulder, but stay away from the excessive exchange of hooting and hollering and patting each other. Just keep doing what you've been doing. It's a short season. It really is. So I don't think anybody's asking anything extraordinary out of you. Now, to the parents, it's not about you. It really is about the kids. And if we will keep that at the forefront, we may have to miss a game. We may have to not let grandma go with us one time. We may have to not go to the big rivalry game we always go to just this 1 year. But let's go next year and have a heck of a time. Let's remember that these kids have sacrificed so much. Us missing out on a little something really won't kill us. And if we'll do it, we can get through this. I really believe the mitigation strategies will let us try to finish the season, but we've got to stick to it.
Julian, thank you so much for taking a few moments out of your day with us. That is some very enlightening information. Really appreciate it. Stay safe. Keep us on these athletic fields here.
We're going to sure give it a try. Just remind everybody one last time. Next year, we hope looks like 2 years ago. This year's not going to look like anything we've ever seen, but we'll get through it.
Thanks, Julian.
All right, take care, Jay.
Thank you, Julian, for being a part of this class and leading our discussion today. And thanks also to the KHSAA for overseeing the health and safety of over 80,000 student athletes in the state of Kentucky, as well as 12,000 coaches and managers. Guys, if we want to continue to be on the sidelines, watching sports and being a part of the games, we got to continue our fight against COVID. So do the right things and make sure we're safe. As always, remain awesome, be nice, stay safe. See you soon, guys.